There are 2 or 3 very basic rules. The first, never play it at home. The second, never say, stay, or you may come in, or go ahead. The third, never throw the board on the floor without closing it first. The fourth, never play it after midnight. When we talk about the Ouija board, the glass game, the planchette, or even cell phone apps, we are talking about divination games. They are delicate subjects for many reasons. The first of them involves people's own belief in the afterlife. That is, it opens doors to suggestion, opens doors to alienation. Under certain stimuli, people who didn't know they had some kind of problem, schizophrenia for example, even if very mild, under this intense pressure that can develop under the suggestion of a glass game or the suggestion of a Ouija game, can develop psychotic episodes in which they may have anything from delusions, hallucinations, seizures. Evidently, a person who also has a temporal-lobe epilepsy problem under certain stress stimuli will develop a dire reaction. But regardless of the strictly neurological or medical aspect, there is another issue behind it. It has always been said by exorcists, by experts in demonic matters and the analysis of these dark and dangerous topics, that under no circumstances should one allow in a being that is not entirely a physical being. If it is dangerous to let in a physical being, a person, letting in a being we do not know what it is, that is lethal. And that's what they mean. Never allow it to enter. They cannot attack you. They cannot just show up and slip into your life like that. But the Ouija game, and in general various types of divination games, especially this one, can become very dangerous. For some experts, even within the paranormal phenomenon, the risk is not so great. But for many others, cases pile up one after another, revealing the risk of this. Let me take you back in time. We are in the city of Puebla, in Mexico. In the central part, on the high plateau, there is a school. Within secondary education in Mexico, there are 3 levels of education: preschool and primary, which are part of the initial block, the so-called secundaria, which corresponds to 3 years, and preparatoria or bachillerato, which are the 3 following years prior to entering university. This school I am telling you about is an urban school. It is set in an urban area, in the middle of the sprawl of the city of Puebla itself, a huge population with several million inhabitants. It is a public school, a government school, a school where hundreds of students attend. The groups can have more than 50 students. There is not good supervision. That is obvious. What teacher can keep control of 50 students? And obviously the levels of security and control of the student body are quite lax. This particular school had a reputation for being a relaxed school. That day, many students, as always, arrived. Classes began. Some went in, some went out. More than one went out to smoke a cigarette. Others went to the back where they smoked something heavier. A few attended class with a real interest in knowledge, but many others were fulfilling a requirement and were just there. Around 11 in the morning, suddenly, from one of these second-year groups, a boy walked out carrying his backpack. The backpack is nothing more than a cloth bag that hangs on the back. After him, 3 or 4 classmates came out. They are the mysterious ones. Just as there are the athletes, the fighters, these are the mysterious ones. Dark, always with a kind of sweatshirt, with a hood, always with some mystery around. They are simply youngsters. The oldest is barely 14. The next in age is 13. The group heads toward a secluded area at the back of the school, where there is a sports field. There is also a kind of disused classroom, a place that is not used where they usually store everything from gym mats to the nets for the courts, etc. It has always been known to be open. Therefore, all kinds of mischief happen in there. That day, this group, including 2 girls about 14 years old, arrives at the place. The reason: one of them, El Chato, has brought a Ouija board. He got it somewhere and has told everyone. They have all agreed and they all want to know what it's like. The girls in particular are interested, so they tidy up a bit, move some things around. The classes, really, the teacher can manage them all. so he doesn't notice when they slipped out of the classroom. Other students from other groups of the same age have come over. There must be about 8 or 9 kids hiding there. This little space, this small classroom, is under the stairs, quite discreet. 4 of those people settle in, place the board in the center, find a kind of small stool on which they set it, take out the planchette and start placing their hands on it. Suddenly, they begin to ask, "Is there anyone here?" Like any good school that prides itself on being a famous school, at this school they say there is a girl who haunts. They also say that a boy committed suicide, and that even in that very space, in that same room, in a romantic fight, a guy many years ago murdered his girlfriend. None of the stories can really be corroborated. They are rumors that are told. But there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness, when after placing their fingers they begin to ask, "Is there anyone here who wants to play with us?" Nothing happens. The next question is the same. "Is there anyone here who wants to play with us?" The ceremonious voice of that boy who tries to seem interesting doesn't work. He gets up and is replaced by one of the girls who quickly places her hands and asks in her shrill voice of a 14-year-old, "Is there anyone here who wants to play with us?" And the thing immediately turns and sets itself on yes. Ha 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 ha. There is much laughter. Then they ask again, "Are you good or bad?" For God's sake, what a silly question that is. If you are good, say yes. Boom. And they start asking innocent questions. "What's your name?" The answer was some random name, Manuel or something like that. "How old are you?" 15. Coincidentally, about the same age as those young people there, which arouses a lot of interest. Those who are a bit further away and doubtful come a little closer to watch carefully how that little thing moves, indicating letters. "Are you dead?" "Yes." "How did you die?" And it answers, "Suicide." There is much unease among those youngsters. "Where are you?" "Here." "Why haven't you gone to heaven?" "I can't." And so they keep asking things as if wanting to get to know that entity or whatever is there. The questions may be very silly, but they keep asking them. And as the minutes go by, some of the boys in the back grow impatient, either because they feel inhibited by it, or because they don't believe any of this and are getting bored. The fact is that after a while, only 5 or 6 people remain, the 4 with the board and 2 others nearby. And the questions begin, the ones they already wanted to ask. For example, who is going to die first? One of the worst questions one can ask. Immediately the thing begins to turn and suddenly points to one of the boys. The next question is Juan the one who is going to die first? The answer is yes. How is he going to die? Accident. Next come more questions, silly questions. Am I going to have a boyfriend this year? Asks one of the girls. Does so-and-so like me? The answers were yes or no. Suddenly the thing begins to move erratically, to make strange movements. What do you want to tell us? And then the change in movement grows stronger, and it begins to spell words that cannot be understood. One of the boys standing is in charge of calling out A, B, C, whatever letter it is pointing to, but he can't manage to say, "Are you still there, Manuel?" And the answer is, "No, I am not Manuel." And they keep asking things. Who are you? Why are you here? And then the name changes, and now it is shorter. About 35 minutes have passed while they are there, when one of the girls asks, "How old are you?" The answer is, "All the age in the world." "Who are you?" And according to one of the witnesses, that thing began to spell the forbidden name, the name that should not be spoken, the name of the evil one. It started to spell it. When it finished, 2 of the boys were very shocked, because they also claimed to have felt a total change in the environment. The atmosphere had been warm at midday, practically a spring day, with 25 degrees Celsius outside. Suddenly, the room becomes icy. Those present begin to get nervous. They take their hands off the board. Then the board begins to move by itself. "I've come for you." And everything becomes very, very, very strange. Sometimes it happens. Moments later, several of the boys have run out. They try to return to the classroom, but the excitement, the nervousness of what they have lived through is enormous. They gather outside, past the gate, on the street. They are there, trembling. One of them lights a cigarette to demonstrate how calming that can be, and they explain, "What the hell was that? Did you see how it moved by itself? I didn't move it. It wasn't me." At that moment, they realize that the girl who was sitting there and another of their classmates are not with them. There is a tense moment because none of them saw them leave. They go back toward the school, approach that small space, and notice that the door is still ajar. As they are about to approach, one of them claims that the door shuts right then and there, and they cannot open it. One of the classmates, who has entered a sort of panic and nervousness, runs to call a janitor, one of the school's staff, to come see what is happening. The man arrives, opens the door, and inside are the two youngsters apparently fainted. When they realize this, not knowing exactly what has happened, they call the security officer and a paramedic who is always at the school. They come and check vital signs. They are fine. The people are fine. They check the pupillary reflexes and they are fainted. There are reflexes and fine. There are no injuries, no evidence of drugs, that they had been smoking or consuming any drug. One of the boys discreetly approaches, takes the Ouija board, puts it in his backpack along with the planchette, and leaves. The girl would recover a few minutes later, visibly frightened, and would be sent home. Her parents would have to come with a behavior report because of that incident, without saying anything. The other boy would have to be transported by ambulance. His state was very strange. He was admitted a few blocks away to a hospital where they could not find an apparent reason for why he was in that state. There was a kind of shock. He was absent. There was a pupillary reflex, and yet there was no consciousness. There was no pain response, no reaction to other things. The heartbeat was normal, but the boy did not seem to respond. He would spend the next 3 days in that same situation, requiring intravenous feeding and several things. During all this time, the boy did not speak, said nothing, was not moving, did not present any reaction typical of someone conscious. However, after the 3rd day, his response was panic. Panic. He began trying to run away, begged them to help him, to save him. Obviously, his parents, who would be around, his mother or his father, came running to see what it was about, when the boy claimed that that one was there, that the evil one, that the very one himself was there, that he was coming for him and wanted to take him away. This even led them to request the help of a local parish priest, who came there to the hospital bed to give a blessing. Apparently, that worked well. For her part, the girl who had been taken home by her own means and who seemed to be fine would develop unusual activity over the following days. She constantly reacted violently to any stimulus, stopped eating, began to have sleep disorders, very severe personality disorders, a change in attitude, a change in personality, violent reactions, to the point where they claimed her voice changed and her physique and behavior were not those of a young girl with a shrill voice of about 14, but of a male with a coarse, offensive voice. Her language was completely transformed at times. At dusk, it reached the point where, if they asked her, "Who are you?" she responded with a series of curses and insults and gave the name of a man, and then she would faint. The girl was taken to a very special church where an old priest, who today rests in the glory of the Lord, carried out a deliverance exercise. According to accounts, it would take many hours. The priest maintained that it was not a phenomenon of possession, but a kind of influence from something they had brought in. When one of the boys bravely confessed what they had done, obviously the girl was taken, the priest was told what had happened, and she was treated. The boy, who had been in the hospital, would recover favorably. As for the guy who had the bright idea to keep the Ouija in his backpack, he would live a tremendous experience. When he got home, so as not to be discovered, he put the board along with the planchette under the mattress between the bed base and the mattress. There he placed it. The worst place to hide something, and even less something like that. From that moment on, sounds, knocks, scratches on the walls, noises that came from everywhere, howling dogs, windows that slammed. and began to vibrate. Wind that came from nowhere. A nauseating smell in the whole room. Those were predominant at those moments. At a certain point, the mother comes and asks, "What is this? What happened?" The rumor had already spread among parents about that incident. It was already known that there had been a problem, and the boy ends up confessing, "It's that I brought the Ouija." They take out the Ouija and try to burn it, something one should never do. It didn't work very well, and not because it was possessed or anything like that. It was simply a contraption difficult to burn. After that, they threw it in the trash. They claimed it came back. It is always hard to know. They would end up getting rid of it following a recommendation that I will tell you about later. But if you think this kind of thing is only stories told from a third party, a fourth, a cousin of a friend, or the acquaintance of an acquaintance, it happened to, wait a moment, because there are many stories that are not only told about a cousin of an unknown person, but through the press, through media, through people who lived it. Erica, from Peru, tells us an episode she lived during high school, the equivalent of preparatoria. She was studying at a bilingual girls' school in Lima, Peru, when they had the bright idea of playing Ouija. Several classmates gathered in a small space where they began to play it. Several others stayed apart while doing other things. But these 4 girls who were there, among them Maria, there was also Vanessa, began to ask questions. The entity, as usually happens, presents itself as a friendly person, as a young boy, as a child, or as something fresh. In this case, it presents itself as a young boy. The game goes on, very pleasant, because it is a good spirit, it is a friend. When they ask it very particular things, it answers about this kindly. When they ask if it likes any of the ones there, it immediately answers, "Maria." Maria becomes terribly nervous, to the point that she faints. Even though they fan her and everything, the girl is passed out. When the person in charge of custody or conduct arrives, the girl is still passed out. She would have to be taken to a place where she could be attended to. Because of that, they are reprimanded. Everyone is punished. Carla did not participate in that game, but the girls who were there had a very bad time. The next day, Maria does not return. Whatever happened to her is a mystery, but she does not come back. And yet, at a certain moment in the morning, while everyone is in class, a strange smell begins to be perceived. A burnt smell, that something is burning, that something has caught fire somewhere. When the panic begins and this feeling that we are on fire starts, they start to go out and realize that from a door where they had been playing that, smoke is coming out. The person in charge arrives with an extinguisher, opens the door, and puts it out. What was burning was the door and some of the frame and some things. Inside, there was no one. A trash can where some clever girl might have thrown a cigarette butt was not burning, for example. It was the door that was burning, and there was no source from which it came. It was said to be a short circuit in a panel. Next day. Again, they are in class. The sensations are unpleasant. A little the fear of what happened, a little the feeling when suddenly, again the smell of smoke. Again they get up. Carla is the brigadier. She is the one in charge of accompanying the group. Although she is a student, she is an advanced student, a group leader. So she begins to direct them to go out. When she opens the door, she realizes that right next to the door is the fire. The screaming grows much greater, because how can they get out if there is fire there? There is smoke. The person in charge arrives again, this poor devil who always arrives with his extinguisher. He tries to open the door. He burns his hand, sir. He finally manages to open it a little, but it doesn't seem to work very well. For a few minutes there is enormous dismay because there is a lot of smoke. After a while, the firefighters arrive. They put out what must be put out, and it turns out that the room, exactly the room where this door had burned, is an empty room where there isn't even a light bulb. It is a cube where there is nothing, and the door has caught fire by itself. It is a thick door. The school was an old house from the 1930s, so it is a rough, strong wooden door that has withstood everything one can imagine. There would be no reason for it to have caught fire, No reason for it to have burned, and above all, why this door, precisely the one at the entrance to the girls' classroom, preventing them from getting out of there? That remained an issue. They would finish their courses not without there being some blessing of the premises. But if that experience does not seem strange to you, let me go to Puerto Triunfo in Antioquia, Colombia. 9 girls under 15 years of age in 2008 played Ouija. They were visibly affected. Episodes of Samson-like strength, extreme force, episodes of delirium, pointing out visits from entities that no one else saw, but all repeated the same. 2 of the girls even identified themselves during these trances as people already deceased. Men, everyone knew because they had participated in paramilitary guards and died near there, either in combat or in strange situations, and they seemed to be. They spoke with a man's voice. They claimed to be that person who had died. They claimed to be there because they had been given permission. My. The newspaper report at the time in Antioquia indicated that at least 9 girls were affected after having played this. They had to be transferred to mental hospitals where they were given therapy and care. Another of the girls was taken to the parish of this same region, where a deliverance exercise was performed. Another of the girls did not need it, but for some time she continued presenting symptoms. It is strange, but suddenly the girls began to convulse, began to scream, to make strange shapes with their bodies, to contort themselves in capricious and grotesque ways, and then began to speak with masculine voices. They were not feigned voices. They were masculine voices, men's voices speaking through those throats of girls. They were young girls, the oldest 15, and they spoke thus. Moreover, according to witnesses who would testify to the local paper in this region of Antioquia, Colombia, they revealed things that others did not know, things that were not public knowledge. They revealed them and made demands. In the end, it would take a long time, but it would be resolved. Another case is in El Paraíso, Honduras. In February 2019, there was another very tragic incident when a 15-year-old girl died after 15 days of a most unusual situation. The young girl, from a rural location of very scarce resources, was the daughter of a couple. She was a cheerful, jovial, party-loving, fun, flirtatious person, about to fulfill her dream of a 15th birthday party, when after playing with the Ouija board, she suddenly began to present these strange symptoms. According to what the girl's grandfather would reveal, she suddenly went into a kind of frenzy. She began to curse with a guttural, strong, rude voice that was not her own, to speak as if she were an old countryman drunk. Immediately, the space where this young girl was began to change, not only in temperature, but the smell. The reigning smell was a smell of urine, drunkenness, filth, like the way a room of an old drunken man would smell. The curses and all that spread little by little. The girl stopped eating, stopped consuming solid foods. She presented these episodes in which she became completely catatonic. They tried to lift her, couldn't. Then she had these violent fits in which she attacked the people around her. 2 strong adult men, tried to hold this girl, who was a slender girl by the way, very pretty, and she overpowered them, threw them as if they weren't there, or as if they were a couple of rag dolls. They went flying. Her throat closed to the point where she could not speak. She only managed with a few words, almost whispering, "Ouija, Mom, Ouija." The burial was very sad. Nothing could be done. Even though the girl was taken to a medical center in El Paraíso, they could not save her life. The medical report was not very precise. The report also stated that she had died from a respiratory complication, etc., etc. But in reality, they were not very clear about what had happened to her. During the last days of life, the young girl had been taken to the doctor, analyzed. Blood tests had been done. She had no intoxication. She had not revealed any ailment. One explanation given at the time was that she had probably contracted botulism from having consumed some spoiled canned food, or perhaps tetanus she might have developed, but neither of the 2 diseases showed traces in the blood tests. The only thing that was clear is that the young girl had played with the Ouija board and had found death. Not enough. Let me turn the page. January 5th, 2003. Chamanga, Ecuador. 16 young people between 12 and 21 years old have begun to scream, kick, suffer grotesque convulsions, and claim to be besieged by the Antichrist. 5 people were detained, 5 youths who were taken as witnesses to find out what had happened. The police intervened in the case. The youths revealed they had been part of a group that played Ouija for days in one of their houses, and that practically all participants were suffering convulsions. The first, except never 2 play people who never attended. The second, who were not there, never say, but who lived in the neighboring houses. A 21-year-old young woman and a 10-year-old girl, who have presented identical symptoms. When they react and come out of these trances in the midst of indescribable horror, they claim to be besieged by a man very, very white, of absolutely white complexion, dressed in black, and who, by the way, wears a strange hat little known in the area. After seeing him is when the convulsions, the attacks, and the suffering begin. During these episodes, witnesses also claim to have perceived strange things, and there are even those who have seen this individual without having anything to do with the episode. What happens with the Ouija board? For some researchers, the board is a door through which something can be let in. Normally, what will enter is not a 14-year-old child, not a kind old man, not an angel, but something else, any other thing that may be there on the other side of reality. The very act of allowing access immediately undermines any protection. When someone asks, "Is there anyone who wants to talk to us?" they are automatically granting access. Thus, at the moment of doing that, our natural protection is undermined. Our protection, if you wish to call it divine, if you wish to call it mental, our own strength within our psyche is undermined. We are opening the door and letting it in. What happens next? Various factors intervene there. First, if the person is afraid, then probably what enters will abuse that fear. If the person has entered with anger, with rage, trying to find an answer, what will be attracted will be that. Various researchers claim that the presence that is there will be a product of our own emotions that we are attracting. For other researchers, including exorcists, whether Catholic or evangelical, people who deal with these kinds of issues, the simple fact of opening the door implies that unclean spiritual entities enter a realm in which they feel wonderfully well, where they can have control, where they can do and undo as they please with the permission of those little people who have just opened the door. The degree of harm will depend on many factors, and thus in many cases, for people whose will and spiritual strength are very great, that will not work even remotely. Of course, there are also those who claim that the Ouija is nothing more than a reflection of the people themselves, even an involuntary reflection, a kind of response produced by a telurgic movement in which the hands obey a mind that is not necessarily aware of what it is writing. But the text drafted there can be twofold. The person themselves responding to their concerns and their unconscious stimuli that they reflect on that board what they want to believe, and on the other hand, also communication, a kind of automatic writing in which spiritual beings are dictating. In any case, if you believed this was only an urban legend portrayed in a movie, many of the cases I have just recounted occur between 1993 and 1996, long before the movie Ouija or the movie Veronica, or whatever movie you want to mention. The fact is that day by day we are finding accounts from 2012, 2013, 2018, 2002, in which numerous people are affected and the common factors having played with the Ouija board. What do you think? In any case, it is always preferable to take some precautions. For example, never bring a Ouija board home. Second, if you want to get rid of it, most experts and scholars of the subject suggest a very simple solution. Bury it. Find a solitary spot. Always bury separately the planchette from the board. Second, whenever you play, close the game. Direct the planchette to the word God. At times, the planchette will try to go elsewhere. Force it to God. Never throw the board away without having closed the session. Whatever it is, always close. If the entity that is there becomes annoying or the movement is erratic, close it immediately. If the entity presents itself as a child, close immediately. If the entity indicates someone's name, close it immediately. They are coming for him. And above all, after midnight, do not play it. Do it by day if you are so interested. My recommendation: do not open doors if later you will not be able to close them.